Good morning, colleagues. Today we are going to have a memo discussion for geography. We are speaking to Murata, learning facilitator for Moteo District. It's important that when we move to this paper, we check that let our candidates work hard. This is our media paper. Today we'll be discussing the paper 1, which is mostly 225 marks. And our candidates yesterday wrote well for 3 hours. Hope they will do us proud because they've got good teachers that are teaching them. Yesterday's question paper consists of 3 questions. Our candidates were expected to answer all 3. Answer the paragraph in style as follows. If it's one detail or effect, you go in detail about it. If it's different ideas, then you minimize your detail because you have to cover all facts. We had the annexure in the paper. Number all your questions, that was related to the candidates. And then leave in line between subsections. Start each question at the top of a new page. And let's make sure that they don't write on the margins. Remember, we have to teach them towards the September and the November examinations. And circle the numbers of the question that we have answered from the front page. They won't do it now because we are not using the final answer sheet. Where possible, illustrate your answer with a what? With a label. This will make sure that you support your statement. And our candidates were expected to write it clearly and legible. Colleagues, it's important that we make sure that their inputs, if there are inputs that you need to send, please don't hesitate to phone me, 060-5879-047. If we don't build this geography, no one will do it for us. And I want now to go straight into the paper and start our memo discussion. Today, we'll get a different style in doing it. We'll have a question and an answer just to try and make sure that we are on par with the whole paper. The first section will be our climatology, which will be the weather and climate, and the geomorphology part. That will be our question 1. We have to take note, colleagues, that this symbol represents our 1 mark. Thank you for veterans, it's very clear. And this will represent our 2 marks. When we check your satellite image that was given for our learners, that is in terms of our mid-latitude cyclone, I think it's important that we must highlight it to them that this will represent our South Africa. And we have an advancing mid-latitude cyclone. Let's go straight into it. They say study this figure, which is figure 1.1, showing your what? Showing your satellite image. Showing your satellite image of the mid-latitude cyclone over Southwestern Cape in South Africa, for which date? For the 26th in 2005. And various options will be given for the possible answers. They must choose the correct answer, A to D, from the question that is being given to them. The first question was saying the mid-latitude cyclone affects southwestern parts of South Africa during which what? Which season? Then they were given an option. A, autumn, B, winter, C, spring, and then D, the summer season. And we know for a fact that the correct answer will be B, that our mid-latitude cyclone advances to South Africa during the winter season. Let's go to the second question. Second question was saying the rain-bearing clouds that form ahead of our cold front during the mature stage of the mid-latitude cyclone is known as which clouds? Let's check them. The first one was altostratus, B, the nimbostratus, C, the cumulonimbus, and D, the cirrus clouds. Rain-bearing clouds in a mid-latitude cyclone, the correct answer is our C, which is the cumulonimbus clouds. We proceed to the third question. This one is responsible for the position of the mid-latitude cyclone closer to the southwestern part of South Africa. Which one? The shifting of the intertropical convergence zone on the equator, the deflection of air to the north, which is B, C, the shift of the intertropical convergence zone. Now we start now to have a competition. is it moving, the convergence zone, is it moving to the south, or is it moving to the north of what? Of the equator. Or there's a change in wind direction from southwest to the northwesterly direction. Then we say for a mid-latitude cyclone to have a position closer to the southwestern part of South Africa, it's when the shift of our ITCZ, intertropical convergence zone, has moved to the what? To the northern part. Therefore, we get our winter season. Let's go to the fourth question. The mid-latitude cyclone is also referred to as what? Is it a low pressure? Is it a high pressure? Is it a coastal low pressure? Or is it a temperate cyclone? Different names, just like in terms of tropical cyclone. Then we say, if you don't want to say a mid-latitude cyclone, you could say they are also known as our temperate cyclones. Me proceed directly to question number 5. Mid-latitude cyclone usually occurs as family or three or four members or cyclone. Each successive member is slightly away from the poles on the synoptic weather map. And where would you get what? We must be very careful. This is the normal question, but you normally put here to say, yes, they move from west and they started to move from west and they move towards the east. And when they move from west to east, where would you get the smallest? The smallest one or the youngest will be found, let's check, is it on the northwesterly direction? Is it on the northeasterly direction? Would you get on the southwesterly direction and or on the southeasterly direction? Now, in this instance, we are looking for the youngest member that you'll ever get in there. And then we say the youngest member will be found on the C part, which is the southwesterly part, because they move from west towards the east. The youngest, they originate on the western side, they move towards the east. So the youngest member will be from the southwesterly direction, and the oldest member, you'll find him towards the northeasterly direction. I may move to, this is not correct in the memo. When you check the memo, it says the youngest member, you find him towards the northwesterly or northeasterly direction. Please, let's correct it. The youngest will be on the western side. So we'll find the youngest on the southwesterly direction. Let's proceed. We've got the general movement of our mid-latitude cyclone. Now in this instance, we want the general direction of our mid-latitude cyclone. They say the general direction of a mid-latitude cyclone moves from where to where? Is it moving from east to west? Is it moving from west to east? Is it moving from northeasterly to southeasterly direction? Or is it moving from the southeast to the northeasterly direction? And the correct answer will definitely be our B. Our mid-latitude cyclone, they run from the western side towards the east because they develop over the Atlantic Ocean. Question 1.1.7. This one occurs when the coldest air in the cyclone is found where? Ahead. Remember, we've got a warm front occlusion and the cold front occlusion. But in this instance, the coldest air in the cyclone is found ahead of your warm front. Then we say, would you get a cold front in that instance? Would you have a cold front occlusion in that instance? Will you have a warm front occlusion, or you have a warm front? And the correct answer will be C. You'll have a warm front occlusion. Remember the sketch that we have. We say, if you've got a descending air, and behind here you've got your cold air, I'll use the symbol C for cold. C will be used for cold conditions. And then you've got an advancing warm air, and I'll use W for warm air. When the two meet, What is important here is to check the direction. Where is the coldest air? In this instance, the coldest air is where? Is behind. Is behind our front. Now, in this instance, you will have a cold front occlusion. But for this answer, you still have your wave, and then you have behind here, now is the opposite. You have your warm air, and ahead, as the question is saying, ahead here, you've got your cold air. When the cold air is ahead, then in this instance, we have our warm front occlusion. Correct answer will be C. Let's move to 1.1.8. Mid-latitude cyclones occurs between what? Of the north and on the south latitude. Is it occurring between 40 to 60 degrees? Is it occurring between 45 to 60? Or between 40 to 60 degrees? Or between 40 to 55 degrees? Or 50 to 60 degrees? The latitudinal position of our mid-latitude cyclone always occurs between our 40 to 60 line of latitude. Let's go to question 1.2. Question 1.2, now we've got your figure 1.2. Figure 1.2 shows us the longitudinal profile from the source to the mouth. Upper course, your middle course, and the lower course. Your speed will be fast, your speed will be lower, your speed will be average, and you start to have the reduction in the speed towards the end of your river. Now, question 1.2 says, study this figure based on the drainage basin and the longitudinal profile. Define the term drainage basin. Okay, let's define it. The answer will be, it is an area drained by a what? A river. This is our river in this instance. And our what? Our tributaries that are joining in between. Question 1.2.2, name the drainage pattern B. When you go to drainage pattern B, we find that we've got our dendritic pattern. It's a 1 mark. It's a 1 mark. Then 1.2.3, what evidence suggests that this longitudinal profile, it's in a graded style? Remember, you've got your graded and your ungraded. Your graded must be even. We say it's because it is even or it's smooth and it has a concave profile. And therefore, there are no what? So we can check our learners. Maybe they said there are no obstacles. We give credit. When they say it is graded because it is smooth and concave profile, we also give them a mark. 1.2.4. Name the underlying what? Rock structure associated with stream pattern B. That's why I mostly normally say to them, in this instance, they must explain. They must explain your dendritic. If you explain it to say these are horizontally sedimentary rocks, these are the underlying structure, where you've got either the massive igneous rocks or the metamorphic rocks or rocks, very important, that I want us to highlight is that these structures are found on a uniform resistance to erosion. Now, this will be the underlying rock structure that you get under the dendritic pattern. Let's proceed. Your memo continues. Determine the stream order at, I'm holding the pen, stream order at C. Remember when you're doing the stream order, we say always in terms of the stream order, and this is basically the stream order. It has 3 tributaries. We say all those that starts, you label them 1. 1 and 1 will give you 2, and then 2 and 1 will remain to be your 2. And then that's why we say the stream order here at C, it will be 2, because first tributary with the second, it goes, increases the order to 2. This is the first order joined with the second order. Then we've got the second order, which is 2. Question 1.2.6. In which course do the river start to do what? To meander. When you check your profile, the upper course, is it meandering? The middle course, is it meandering? Yes, we start to find it. and then the lower course, we start to have your deposition. Then we say it starts to meander in the middle course. 1.2.7, explain the term longitudinal profile. Very clear. Side view of the river from what? From the source to the mouth. This will be from your source to your mouth. Also your one mark, the total you'll get it out of 7. Let's continue 1.3. Study figure 1.3 showing a what? A cross section through a line thunderstorm, which develops along a moisture front, or what we call your trough line. Now immediately you started to check your figure, you'll start to see that you must identify your oceans to be easier. Then colleagues will agree to say this will be your Atlantic Ocean and that will be your Indian Ocean at B. Explain the meaning of the term moisture front, just like it appears in the question. A moisture front is a boundary between what? Between two air masses with different properties with regard to what? To moisture content and also with regard to temperature. Then give a 1 mark for that. It's important that they must mention to us two masses. Why? Because the Atlantic Ocean is cold, the Indian Ocean is warmer. We've got two air masses with different properties with regard to the moisture content. It's not the same. Also with regard to temperature. Atlantic is cold, Indian is warmer. Identify the two winds at A, which will be our A, and at B, which will be through our Indian Ocean. And we say, at A you've got, this time we want two winds. At A we have your southwesterly winds, and then at B you've got your northeasterly winds. We'll come and deliberate deeper into this. 1.3.3. Indicate which of the two winds mentioned above, which one is warm and moist, and which one is cold. It will acclimatize itself with the properties of the oceans. And we agree in principle to say the A, it's cold and dry, while B, it's very moist and it's very warm. Because the Indian is warmer and moist than the Atlantic. Colleagues, I think it's important that this moisture front to deliberate deeper into it for our learners to have a deeper meaning into it. Explain why these two winds that we have mentioned. We have said that the A, it's cold, and the B, it's warmer. Why these two have different what? Characteristics in terms of the very same question. The moisture content and also with regard to the temperature. Now we must differentiate the properties. We say A, it's cold, it's dry, because it adapts its characteristics from, very important, from the Atlantic Ocean, with the cold current air with less moisture or low humidity. Our candidate will get 2 marks. Learners will also explain the B to say B, it's warm, it's moist, because it adapts its characteristics from which ocean? Very important, from the Indian Ocean, with warm temperatures and high humidity or your moisture content. Let's continue, colleagues. In a paragraph of approximately how many lines? 8 lines. Explain how these line thunderstorms develops. Why these line? How do these thunderstorms develop? 8 marks. Level 7 candidates, this is where we want them to excel. Let's encourage them, colleagues. We say the first one, they must remember that the Kalahari high pressure will be moved upward. It's dominant. And then this allows moisture from the Indian Ocean to flow into the interior of South Africa from the northeasterly direction. Cold air, cold, drier air from around the South Atlantic high pressure cell also blows into the interior. Now we started to differentiate the wind. And then these two air masses, what do? They converge to form a moisture front. 2 marks for every point that our candidate is doing. As much as we have been talking of the cold, now we'll deliberate on the warm. We say warm air rises above the cold air at greater heights and started to do what? To cool down. And then the cumulonimbus will be formed and are accompanied by heavy clouds. If you check our candidates or learners, if they check well, this is mostly one of the questions that we had in the multiple choice question. That when you started to talk of your rain-bearing clouds, we talk of your cumulonimbus, which will be formed when you started to have air that comes from the Atlantic, Ocean, which will be cold, and you start also to have air that comes from the Indian Ocean that will be warm. When the two air masses meet along your moisture front, automatically your warm air will be forced to rise. That's why we say warm air will rise above the cold air. Warm air will rise, and once the warm air starts to rise, it will condense, forming your cumulonimbus clouds, which are accompanied by your heavy rainfall. Colleagues, let's continue. Now we move to figure 1.4. Study figure 1.4, which illustrates the microclimate of the city. Immediately it says to us, your microclimate, we know that your microclimate, small scale climate. Define the term urban heat island. What do you mean by urban heat island? The city center, which has high temperatures than the surrounding rural areas. Or one of our learners could say, the area where you have higher temperatures of the city surrounded by lower temperatures. We give our learners a mark for defining our urban heat island. Then question 1.4.2, which areas in the city experiences what? The highest temperatures, and which one experiences what? The lowest temperatures, respectively. They must mention both. Then we say, always when you have the highest temperature, we find it around our city center, which is the CBD. And then where you have the lowest temperatures, we found it on our rural urban fringe, or when one starts to move towards the outskirts. Then we give 1 mark for each of the learners' answers. Let's continue, colleagues. On the same figure 1.4, 1.4.3, distinguish clearly between urban heat island, very clear, and your what? The pollution dome. Then we say, always with an urban heat island, it is as a result of what? I wanted to clarify this. Your urban heat island is as a result of a urban heat which is extending what? Vertically. Your urban heat island is extending vertically, and this occurs when? Mostly during the daytime. Dispensing or taking your pollution particles to the what? To the higher levels or to your troposphere. At the very same time, this occurs during the day. Now let's talk of the pollution dome. This explains your urban heat island, the vertical upward movement that we get during the day. Now at night time, the air starts now to be cooler, and it will now start to do what? To subside. And this occurs pushing what with it? It pushes your pollution particles downward, resulting in the concentration of pollution dome closer to the Earth's surface. So we can conclude, urban heat island, the air will rise up and it will start to move vertically during the day. Your pollution dome, it starts to move or subsides downwards at night, and immediately it subsides, it takes along with it, or it decreases with it in terms of the pollution also decreasing. Then we say the urban heat island occurs when? During the day and has a greater vertical dimension, while the pollution dome occurs when? It occurs at night, and it compresses the pollution over the city at night. The heat island is well developed when? During the day. We have a repeating time, but in this instance, we say it is well developed, while the pollution dome is equally also well developed when? So the difference here will be the definition of it in terms of its full development. Well developed urban heat island during the day, and the pollution dome well developed at night time. The heat island represents the heat over what? Over the city. Your urban heat island, it represents your heat over the city, while our pollution dome represents what? Represents the pollution that is compressed over your air. Colleagues, very important paragraph questions for better levels to our learners. Take any one of them that is mentioned, and then our learner must get a 2 mark out of it. Let's continue the memo discussion. Suggest any one reason for the difference in what? Difference in temperature. Difference in temperature between your city center and your outskirts, or like the previous question was saying, the rural urban fringe. Why do you have these differences in the temperature in the city, and you have also different temperature on the outskirts? We say we've got more artificials that you get in the city center, like dark glass, or also your paving, which will be doing what? Which will be absorbing your heat. So if they said your artificials, we give them your credit. Building also that you get in the city increases surface area, which can start to absorb your heat. Also the 2 mark. High density of buildings, or more concentration, or like they normally say it, many buildings that you get within the city also makes your city to be hotter. Or there are fewer plants that you get within the city center that will also make your city to be also hot. Or the presence of the industries that are emitting what? Your greenhouse, that are emitting your greenhouse gases that you get within the city center. It will also make your CBD always to be with higher temperatures. Take any one of them, colleagues, and let's give them 2 marks because it's a 2 mark question. Let's proceed now to see why the outskirts are now having lower temperatures. 1.4.5 suggests 3 strategies to reduce this heat within the city center. What is it that we can do? Number 1, let's go solar, or use alternative sources of heat. So if our learners say, normally they say solar energy, then it's fine. Then we go solar or use alternative sources of heat, give 2 marks. The second thing, we must plant trees, or the others will say the green belt, so that they absorb your carbon dioxide and they give you the oxygen in cooling the city. It develops more water bodies or fountain or ponds to decrease air temperatures. Let's have water sources that you could get. I came across another learner saying swimming pools, and I think because it will form part of your ponds where water is collected, you can also give credit to say let's have some water sources or swimming pools within the city center. Then use light colored material. What will be the purpose of the white colored material? It's because white color will not attract more sunlight, unlike the darker part. And then make sure that we control the number of vehicles that you get in the city center. We can expand on it, restrict industrial activities to daytime when less pollution or heat will be trapped. And then build longer chimneys of industries that release pollution above the inversion layer. We must have longer chimneys that will definitely take all these pollutants out of the city. Then our city center will remain cooler. Then you can also have filters on chimneys. What will be the purpose of filters? they will now start to trap the very same pollution. Or decentralization of industries from the city center towards the outskirts. Our industries must now be located on the outskirts. Take any one of them, colleagues, and it's a 6 marks question, so it's 2 marks each. For 3 of them, it will give us 6. Let's continue, colleagues. 1.5, illustrating a what? A drainage basin in a catchment area. Then question 1.5.1, the river system seems to be denser at A, this is where we are talking of A, than where you get it at B. That's where you'll get your B. And explain these differences. Why is it the case? Now we say at A, there's no vegetation. At A, there is less to no vegetation. At A, water is not easily absorbed because there's no vegetation, it will run freely. That's why we say you'll start to have more runoff and therefore more tributaries will develop. And it's a fact. When you look at it, find that there are more tributaries that develop. Now let's check B. At B, you started to have more vegetation cover. Water will be easily absorbed because there's vegetation, and then there will be less runoff because of vegetation, therefore fewer tributaries. No wonder we start to have only 2 tributaries. If you check here, so this one, only 1 and 2, unlike in the area A where there are many. You take any of them and we work with it. Colleagues, paragraph questions. In order to manage this very same drainage basin, the whole area that is drained by a river and it's what? It's tributaries. We're just explaining your drainage basin. It needs to be taken into consideration. What happens upstream in the tributaries will definitely affect the lower stream. Remember your longitudinal profile. Conservation of the whole drainage basin must be very much sustainable to ensure that your future generations also benefit from the very same drainage. With reference to figure 1.5, write a paragraph of not more than 8 lines outlining ways through which people, what do? They impact on the drainage basin and the measures that must be implemented. It means this question, we must have 2 parts of answers. We must have the impact of people. We must equally have the solutions, strategies that we could come up to maintain our catchment area. Now we say the first one, removal of ways through which people impact on this drainage basin, the negative part. Removal of plant cover. People, they deforest. Industrial settlement activities result in an increase in what? In soil erosion, which lead to an increase in the amount of deposition on the mouth of the river. We said what occurs upstream will definitely have an impact on the downstream, which has started on your upstream. Now, less infiltration of water will also occur. The second answer, pollution caused by human activities leads to the decrease in the what? In the quality of water of the drainage area, or they will start to have now the growth of your algae, also 2 marks. The third one, dam building of water storage can start to have a positive effect of controlling floods along the river. Therefore, there will be less erosion in the area. Then, building of canals and artificial furrows to divert water for farmland irrigation can affect the shape of the river and also with the drainage basin. The impact of people on the very same catchment area. Removal of water from the drainage basin for what purpose? Domestic, industrial, and agricultural purpose can influence the volume of water available downstream. We also give your 2 mark point there. Right, now let's move to 1.5.2 when we continue with it. So in order to manage the drainage pattern, now we are coming to the second part of the answer. Measures that could be implemented to do what? Now we want to restore our drainage basin or our catchment area. Number one, we say, stop removing the natural vegetation that we have in the area. Try to implement your contour plowing. So if a candidate says, stop removing the natural vegetation, or you give 2 marks, even if you add, she did not add to say, implement your contour plowing. Second one, prevent pollution of the river by educating your people. There must be educational programs of training of our population or our people so that they don't pollute the catchment area or the drainage pattern, the drainage basin. Plan irrigation on the more scientific way of doing things. Move away from an old method. Let's try the scientific way of doing it. And then proper water management is important, and make sure that there is also a flow of water in the river downstream continuously. Don't divert it. Now, colleagues, let's make sure that we move to the bullet, the last one. Any 4, but make sure that you've got 1 from each expected area. Remember, we had the first slide where you started to have what is the impact of the people, now what are the solutions to it, so that they get the full 8 marks. 2 points on the first one, which will be 4 marks, and 2 points on the next one, which will also be 4 marks to give us the 8-mark question. Then we move to the next slide, 1.5.3. Propose any 3 ways to reduce the impact of people on the drainage pattern, on the drainage and the catchment area in future. Your 6 mark. Say, encourage better farming methods. The second one, started to plant trees or your afforestation, and upgrade and maintain your sewage system. Then the 4th one, enforce better disposal methods of pollutants containing heavy metals. Conduct public awareness, or they could also say here, start to educate your public. We can also take it as another measure. And then impose fines on people that are not listening. We also take it. Restore the natural flow. 2 mark each. Take any 3 of them to give us the 6 mark. Colleagues, let's move on to the next part of it, 1.6. Look at figure 1.6, which is in front of us. And then we start, which illustrates, it talks to us. I think it's very important that to our learners, we emphasize the questioning, opening part of the question. Because it already tells him or her to say, now you focus on something, which is the river capture or your stream piracy. Define this term, river capture, 1 mark of it. It's a process where a more energetic stream, what will the energetic stream do? It will capture the water of another stream or the less energetic stream. What do we call the river marked B on the diagram? What do we call your river marked B on the diagram? You started to find your river B on the diagram there. We call it your captive or your captured stream. When we check the 2, you started to find that you've got your sea or your ocean. Then the 2 streams are flowing into your ocean. But when one started to look deeper, you'll start to see that there's a strong headward erosion that is occurring. That your stream B is moving towards stream A slowly and surely. And this is before, and when you check the after, you'll find that definitely stream B has now started to move into stream A. And when you check here initially, you'll find that the 2 streams were separate from each other, especially when you can check along C here. Along area C here, you'll start to find that they are not joined. But when you move in here, you'll find that they are joined. Now it is joint stream. Then we say at B here, you have your captured stream, the one that has been captured. And then the river C is involved in an active headward erosion. Differentiate between headward erosion and your downward erosion. Now we differentiate between the two. We say headward erosion is responsible for the what? For the lengthening. Your headward erosion is responsible for the lengthening. Maybe I should get another color. For the lengthening of your river. And the downward erosion is responsible for what? Your downward erosion is responsible for the deepening of the river. So it's the downward, it tells you to say we are moving deeper into the river. But your headward will start to lengthen the river when we move forward. Colleagues, let's continue. 1.6, figure 1.6 still continues to talk of the river capture. Name the features labeled D and E as a result of the river capture. You've got your D here, and you've got your E, which is the area that is left. D, it's pointing at where it starts to turn. Where it will start to turn, we say where it turns, it's your elbow of capture, and then at E, you've got your wind gap. Straight and forward. Name and explain the 4 factors causing one stream to be more energetic. Why stream B is more energetic and capture the water of the less energetic stream. The first one, we say consider the gradient. A river flowing on a steeper gradient. Your river flowing on a steeper gradient than the one that flows on the other side, the gentle part, will have to erode the area faster and even deeper, and will capture the other river's water. We consider what? The gradient. The second part would consider the volume. If one river has what? A lot of water, a large amount of water than the other, it will start to have more erosive power and captures the water of the less erosive river. The third one, we check what? The rock resistance. A river flowing over the less resistant rock will erode deeper and more quickly. One over more resistant rock will start on the other side of the watershed. Its water will start to capture its water when the river flowing over the less resistant rock. And then we talk of the altitude. When one river is flowing at a lower altitude than the other, it will flow faster and capture the water of another river and start to erode the watershed flowing at a higher altitude. This will take me to say our question 1 will now be complete in terms of the section A of it. Now we move to question 2, colleagues. Question 2, it says, choose from the column that is given and the description of the column A. Write down letters A to H next to the question in your answer book. For example, 2.1.6, then they must start to give us the letter that is correct. Streams that have the source in a what? In a high rainfall area, we call them your what? Your exotic rivers. River flow that occurs on what? On thin layers, you've got your laminar flow. Colleagues, let's try to take this method into consideration, that some learners, they write letters correctly as the question is saying, but others are writing answers. So let's also have on our memo an allowance to give them answers. If they give correct answers, then we must also give them credit and not penalize them. The upper limit of the groundwater, we call it your what? Your water table. River that flows only after heavy rainfall. These are your episodic rivers. A point where 2 or more streams, where do they meet, you've got a confluence. Rivers that flows on a swelling or turning motion, then you've got your turbulent. Rivers that flow all throughout the year. You've got your permanent rivers, and then a point of origin of a river, you started to have your source. Like I'm saying, we also created them when they have given us the alphabets correctly, or when they've given us the words that we want to talk about. Now let's talk of question 2, continuing, figure 2.2. Study the information on satellite image of the tropical cyclone Haruna to us, take into consideration for figure 2.2. Name the center of a tropical cyclone labeled A. Our center will be, colleagues, our I, it's a mark. 2.2.2, state the direction in which the clouds, I know they are going to run into it and give us the general direction. The clouds are turning, or how the clouds are rotating around the center of a tropical cyclone. We say they are rotating clockwise, it's 1 mark because we're in the southern hemisphere. To continue, what was the lifespan of the existence, the lifespan, or what you call the time of existence of the tropical cyclone Haruna? Let's read the article. Tropical cyclone Haruna developed in the Mozambique Channel on the 18th of February. I've highlighted it there. It reached a peak wind speed of 150 kilometers per hour. It weakened slightly when it reached the land, where a previous system had already flooded the land. When Haruna arrived, 7,400 houses were destroyed, and rice and maize crops were also damaged. 26 people were killed, 127 injured, and there was an outbreak of a disease after the tropical cyclone started to dissipate. It dissipated on the 24th of February. We check the date, 24th and up to the 18th up to the 24th of February. Now, what was the lifespan? 7 days. From the 18th up to 24. Counted 7 days, we give a mark for that. How many tropical cyclones, very important, including Haruna, have occurred in Mozambique? We say 8 for the alphabet H. Suggest one reason why tropical cyclone Haruna started to weaken when it moves over Madagascar. They don't want to say over the land. It weakens over the land because of friction from the land that is caused, and this started to reduce momentum, and it is cut off from the moisture supply. Colleagues, 2 mark each for 8 there, and then the 2 mark for the point when it says friction, or because it has lost the momentum. Friction which has reduced the momentum, or when our learner says it is cut off from the moisture supply. Aspect. Let's refer to figure 2.3, which shows aspect, direction in which the slope faces. And this time, correctly, we are in the southern hemisphere. Define the term aspect, the direction in which the slope faces, correct? Or they could say the angle at which the sun rays strikes the slope. And that will be 1 mark for the definition there. What evidence suggests that this valley is situated in the southern hemisphere? What evidence do we have that we are in the southern hemisphere? And when we check our figure there, we'll start to see that at D, at area D, we are facing, maybe I could also just for clarity, started to put our sun there. We say we are facing towards the north. And we are in which hemisphere? We are in the southern hemisphere. And we know, colleagues, that we are in the, if we are in the southern hemisphere, always the slope that is correct will be the north-facing slope. That's why we say the answer, the north-facing slope receives direct sun rays to support the statement that we are now in the southern hemisphere. Explain why area A is this one. Why area A is referred to as a what? As a shadow zone. We say area A is referred to as a shadow zone because the area does not receive any sunlight. And it's correct, colleagues. if the rays, even if you check our diagram, the rays are not reaching area A because now it is on the shadow side. And we also say the area A is far away from the sun. 2 marks for that. And then high-lying area cast a shadow. The only difference with this side will be that we must include the high-lying area, which also shows that this side is on the shadow. Area A, it is on the shadow side. 2 marks each, colleagues. That's why we have given 2 points for that. Explain how wind B will develop during the day. Check wind B. And the arrow tells us a lot to say, is this the katabatic or the anabatic? Air starts to move upslope. Now explain how this process of the anabatic wind that moves upslope, anabatic, will occur. We say air in contact with the slope will start to be heated up. Immediately once the sun starts to heat this surface, the valley will start to be warmer. Now any air that is in contact with this slope will now also start to move upslope. Remember, it can also move on both sides. And then once it is heated up, our air becomes lighter, less dense, and it will be able now to rise upslope, and it will start to have your rising upslope. 2 marks for that, so that our candidates can also come back to it. Say the air in contact with the slopes. Remember, it is now during the day. Slopes will be warmer. Once slopes are being heated up, they become warmer. Any air that we've got there at night, the katabatic, will also be warmed up, and it will start also to rise upslope. Then our air will become less dense, and it will start to rise upslope. Continue with the last part before we take our break. In a paragraph of approximately how many lines? 8 lines. Give advice to a what? To a farmer on how to plan the usage of which area? Yeah, area C and area D. As to how can you plan the usage, must advise the farmer. Let's advise the farmer. Number 1, say to the farmer, check the north-facing slope in the southern hemisphere, which is D, will receive sunlight. Let's advise the farmer. Crops that require direct sunlight will be more well-placed. Let's advise the farmer. Descending cold air from the frost pocket on the valley floor, because at sea now it starts to be colder. Then crops that are sensitive to frost should not be planted at sea. And the farmer will show that. Only those that are good, those that need sunlight, will be planted at D, but at sea, because it's frost, we must not put any crops that are resistant to frost there. Then frost-resistant crops can be planted at sea, yes, because at sea now they want these cold conditions and they will grow well. And then soils on the north-facing slope will also be drier. The farmer must remember that this part will be directed to the sun. It will be drier, which will have a lot of evaporation. Therefore, he must irrigate a lot, and the farmer will be expected to irrigate all these north-facing slope to successfully plant on it. And then the farmer can be located on the higher slopes, which are warmer in the thermal belt. Colleagues, let's take any 4 of them, accept any reasonable answer from our learners or candidates, and we'll proceed after we take our break, and then we'll discuss it. Like I said, please feel free to contact me so that we beef up this geography. Thank you very much. Welcome back. I think we must finish the last session. Hopefully we took a small break and we'll start to develop geography even further. Colleagues, before me we've got, when you continue with question 2, you've got figure 2.4 showing the different position of the upper inversion layer over South Africa. Now, the first question, 2.4.1, it says, define the term temperature inversion. What do you mean by temperature inversion? Temperature inversion means an increase in temperature with an increase in altitude. The higher you go, the warmer it becomes. An increase in temperature with an increase in altitude. Name the high pressure cell that forms over the plateau of sketch A. Let's check sketch A. When you check sketch A, I want our learners, we must also make them aware that, in brief, this is the whole of South Africa. And even once you come on this side, this is our South Africa. See, now the pen is not clear. And then to say, always once we have drawn the map of South Africa, we started to know that the only high pressure that we get in the interior or part of South Africa, we call it your high pressure cell, or what you call the continental high pressure. Explain the what? The origin of the very same high pressure that we have mentioned. Now we want the origin of the Kalahari high pressure cell. So the Kalahari high pressure cell originates in the subtropics. It is therefore associated with subsiding or sinking air. Land is cool because the Kalahari high pressure cell, we find it in winter, resulting in more of the air sinking or subsiding downward. The upper air converges and results in the what? In the subsidence of air. Remember, we've got your latitudinal position where we say always where the air converges in the lower areas, it will, in the upper air, it will start to converge in the upper air, and once it has converged in the upper air, it will converge in the upper air. Once it converges in the upper air, it will start to subside or to sink downward. Then we say the very same subsiding results in the formation of which cells? We say this results in the formation of your Hadley cell and your Ferrel cell. Colleagues, let's continue. 2.4.4. Explain how the varying position, and when we check it, we can start to see that the position of the inversion layer is not the same. The varying position of the inversion layer, as shown in figure 2.4 in sketch A and in sketch B, has influenced the amount of what? Of rainfall received over South Africa. These will occur on which season? The summer season and the winter season. Refer also to the impact of this movement of your inversion layer will have on what? On farming. It means we must again advise enough in terms of the position of it to the farmer. How can this be of benefit? 8-mark question. The influence of rain. We say in summer, the inversion layer is above the escarpment, which allow moist air to enter into the interior. To be carried over the interior, the moist air from the Indian Ocean to enter into the interior, and the results will be high rainfall. Very true. And we make a conclusion to say this inversion layer will be, will be for our summer season. Then moist air is able to enter into the interior. It comes from the Indian Ocean, and then the inversion layer is definitely above the escarpment. Once it is above, then for the farmer, we can advise him to say, during summer, you'll get rainfall. Now let's say, in winter, what happens? In winter, the inversion layer is below the escarpment. We can agree to say, I'll make a W for winter. And then in winter, the inversion layer is below the escarpment because strong subsiding air, you can even check these arrows, strong subsiding air that you get and moist air prevented to reach the interior, and the results will be stable conditions, or there will also be no rainfall. And when you check the sketch B, sketch A, you'll start to see that you also still have the Indian Ocean. Moisture cannot reach the interior of South Africa because the inversion layer is now being subsiding, or it's being suppressed by this subsiding air. It's being suppressed downward, and then the results, what will be the results here? We started to have the drier conditions. That's why the interior of South Africa, we don't get rainfall, reliable rainfall for farming during winter. But here we said inversion layer will rise. We've got your Indian Ocean, moisture will be able to enter into the interior, and you start to have the results of rainfall there. But in this instance, you'll have stable conditions, or where we have no rainfall, but in the summer season you get your own rainfall. What will be the impact to the farmer? Number one, we say in farmer, due to high rain, variety of crops can start now to be grown. We can start to grow variety of crops that you get because there's rainfall. Number two, our animals will start now to graze well because it is summer and you'll start to have more rainfall. And then now the opposite. What will happen in winter? In winter we'll start to have drought-resistant crops are planted, and the farmer is restricted in this or in her own choice because of the very same drier conditions. And then the farmer can also go to say it's winter, okay, now I'm going to change type of crops. I'm going to put now drought-resistant crops so that they can start to grow even well. Then stocks can be fed during the lower rainfall in winter, which will be the impact. Remember, there will not be any rainfall, so you'll have to feed his own animals during the winter season. Candidates should mention the position of the inversion layer. Where is it? Is it high above the escarpment or low above the escarpment? And what will be its effect? If it's high above the escarpment, there will be rainfall in the interior because moisture will pass through. If it is below, there will not be. Then the farming activities should also include, must advise the farmer during summer and also during the winter conditions. Learners should indicate their understanding of the influence of the pressure cell over South Africa, which is the impact that we have tried. Colleagues, let's give each candidate 2 marks. That's why we must also take a reasonable answer, even though it's not clearly as it is now, but it should be very clear in terms of the understanding that you are getting there. Now let's refer to figure 2.5. Refer to figure 2.5, which shows the fluvial features. These features are found in different courses of the map: upper course, middle course, lower course. Identify feature label B. We are now here. B, we get what? It's a waterfall. Water will start to fall downstream. Your waterfall, water will start to fall downstream. 2, state one condition necessary for the formation of this feature. How come that we have a waterfall? We say there's a difference. When you check the top part, you've got a hard-resistant rock. And then the underlying part, you've got a soft-resistant rock. That's why we say always in terms of your waterfall, it will start to erode upstream, not downstream. Softer rocks will be found downstream of the hard rock, and we can see it's softer. Then explain the value of this B to humankind. What will be the importance of this waterfall to us? Number one, it will attract us as tourists who will visit the area. Because there's a lot of water, we can also generate hydroelectricity. And because now tourists will be coming, then we can start to have a lot of moolah, income, money. Explain the development of feature A. And when you check, we said mostly waterfall in the upper course. But when you check your area A, you'll find that they started to find sand islands. This talks to us to say now we must be in the lower course, where there's a lot of deposition that you get. We say when the river A has occurred because the river has a large load where? In which course? In our lower course. In our lower course, deposition side. Water is slow moving because of the slope is gentle. That's why you've got the development of these islands. There's no speed anymore. Then the third one, river can no longer carry its own load. Remember, the load is all materials carried by the river. Instead, the river will now deposit the material. That's why we have those small sand dunes there. Blocks its own path as it is forced to flow around the deposited material, forming what? The braided streams. After all these materials have been deposited there, now the river must maneuver its way in between here, and that will give us the braided stream. Right, colleagues, let's give them 2 marks. It's a 4-mark question, 2 each will give us 4. State it at which course of the river will you find A, and where would you find B? Upper course, middle course, and the lower course. We are still going with the longitudinal profile. We say A, it's in the lower course, effect. Lower area, gentle slope, less load, more deposition, braided stream. And then B, we find it in the upper course, where you've got your waterfalls. Thank you, colleagues. We can go on. Question 2.6. Refer to figure 2.6, giving us 3 different types of rivers. ABC, write only ABC next to the question number. When they check our candidates, they'll start to see that these streams are different. And what makes them more different is the key, where you've got your wet water table and you've got your dry water table. That's the whole thing that gives the difference in them. Question number 1, 2.6.1. Which river is an episodic river? When you check the 3, we say C will be your episodic river. Which river is a periodic river? We say then your B will be your periodic river. And which river will be your exotic in the what? In the lower course. Then we say check your C will be your exotic river in the lower course. And then in which picture of the riverbed always below the water table? When you check, you find that the riverbed, where is it always below? And then we say check A, our permanent rivers that flows all throughout the year. It is always below. And then in which picture does the groundwater never contribute to the stream flow? Remember, underground water, amongst the 3, where you don't see any contact, we say look at C. The water table is far from the contact with it. Question 2.6.6. In which picture does the river flow only when? During rainy seasons. Then we say river B flows only during your wet, check, wet water tables during rainy seasons. In which picture does the river flow only after your heavy rainfall? After your heavy rainfall, you start it, because this river will only collect water when it rains heavily. Then it will start to flow. C will be correct. 2.6.8. In which picture does the river always intersect with the water table? We say at A. If you check, I think it's 2.6.5 or 2.6.4. We had the same question there. Right, now the meandering stream. Question 2, let's continue with it. Our river now starts to meander. Our river will now start to meander, your cutoffs. Figure 2.7 represents the cross profile of a riverbed. Identify the riverbanks at C and your riverbank at D, respectively. Now we say C, it's your undercut, where your river starts to erode. It erodes on the outside and it deposits on the inside, where you have your slip of cut. And then your D will be your slip of card. 1 mark each, colleagues. We give them a credit there. Explain why deposition occurs on the inner bank. Why do we have deposition there? Because on the outskirts, when your river starts to flow downstream, you'll find that on the outskirts it erodes, and where it erodes, it's deeper and it flows faster. And then it will erode, it will deposit on the inside because it will start to flow very slower. That's why here at C we say you start to have your erosion, and then at D will start to have your deposition. And you can see that at D it is deeper on the side. Then 2.7.2 continues. Stream loses energy and cannot carry its load. That's why it will definitely deposit here, because it is now flowing slower. Then 2.7.3, give and explain one way in which a river could be able to carry its load. We say a river can be able to carry its load. Sometimes the load is very much fine, soluble particles that have done what? That has dissolved in the water. And because now it's a solvent or a solution, now it can be carried easily. Or they can be transported in a form of a solution or in a form of fine solubles or very light particles. And then fine solubles is carried in a form of what? Remember suspension, attrition, in a form of suspension. Because they are light, they can be carried easily, and it transported as a what you call what? Your suspension load. Or particles, sometimes you find them to be very heavy, like your gravel, like your sand is lifted and it will be deposited. Then what will be the purpose of these large particles? They will be bouncing along the bed of the river. Then we talk of your saltation load. This is how we can transport your materials. And then large stones and rocks are rolled where? Along the bed of the river. And is transported as what you call what? The bed load, or what? The traction load. Refer to any one of them of the transportation or the method, either the transportation or the method that the learner, solution load, suspension load, your saltation load, or your traction load that the learner has given. And then refer, the velocity might also increase, and the water cannot negotiate the bend, and it bursts its own river banks. Colleagues, let's continue with 2.7. Figure 2.7 represents your cross profile of a riverbed. Explain why flooding is most likely to occur after heavy rainfall. Why do we have floods? Because the river is flowing very fast. The water cannot negotiate its bend, and it will start to burst its banks. Question 2 will be complete, colleagues, where we started to have our 75 marks also for our learners. Remember the challenge that we have with climate and weather. Your section A, climatology and geomorphology, let's drill them even further. They can also play around with these slides. You ask a question, they answer. You ask a question, they answer. You ask a question, you give them the CD so that they can also learn at home and ask themselves each question, then answer each question. I think they will enjoy it even further. Let's go to section B. Section B, which will be our rural and urban settlements, which will be question 3. Give a concept of the following descriptions that you get that are given. Concept in the column A, 3.1.1 up to 3.1.5, and write them in your answer book. A settlement, 3.1.1, a settlement which is mostly residential, as people work in the nearby city. And we call that to be what? Your dormitory town. Second question, the settlement in relation to its what? To its surrounding. That will be your situation. 1 mark each. 1 mark each as the question paper states it to us. 3.1.3, the program to bring about equitable distribution of land. A what? An equitable distribution of land ownership access by changing the laws governing land ownership and access to the land tenure. Then you started to have your land redistribution. A decrease in the number of people living where? In rural areas, because young people are now living and the population of the settlement starts now to be left with old or aged people. Then we say that is rural depopulation. Then number 5, a settlement in a, colleagues, you must check this one also. It was not correct in the memo. A settlement in a dry area situated near a what? Near a water source. It means these people are gathering around a water source, cannot be a dry point. Then it starts to be, that's why I highlighted it in green, it's a wet point settlement. And then question 3 continues. Choose a term from column A to column B that matches. Your column A to column B that matches. E.g., our learners should write 3.2.6 and give you the letter. But remember what we said with it. We said you can also give them credit even if they gave you the explanation of it. Then we say forces that do what? That attract and keep people and business in the city. These are the centripetal forces. Remember, centripetal or your pull factors. What do? They attract. Centrifugal, they repel people. Or the candidate will have written, or a learner will have written, C. A new land use takes over the former. New land takes over the former. Inappropriate land use in the city. Then we talk of your invasion and succession. Remember, when the CBD started to expand over the transitional zone, we start to talk of your invasion and succession, or the letter F. The modernization and improvement of what? We are improving old houses close to what? To the city center. Then we talk of the gentrification or the Chelseaification, or the candidate will give you the letter E. When the old original front of building, the what? Original front of building is retained and the new development is built behind, then we call of your facasm, or the candidate will have given you the letter B. The tendency for countries across the world to become better connected and more similar in nature to one another. We say now you are moving to G, where we started to globalize the world. Colleagues, question 3 continues. You are given figure 3.1. Refer to figure which shows a variety of settlement and land use, and you match letters in the figure with the description of it. Write the letter 3.3.1 up to 3.3.5. Informal settlements. You've got, they will form around D here. And then dispersed rural settlement, where would you find them? You find them around C there. And then traditional settlements, where would you find them? You'll find them traditional, those hamlets, they find them around A. And then CBD, where would you find it? We find our city center around E. And then the nucleated rural settlement, nucleated. Then you started to check that B will be more nucleated around the area. Let's continue with 3.4. Shows a rural settlement in the Eastern Cape province. Why can settlement in the photograph be seen as a hamlet and not a village? We say there is a loose grouping of houses when you check them. There's another one here. Grouping, or a village will have what? More nucleated or a more specific shape. But a hamlet will start to have a loose grouping of your own houses. The Eastern Cape is considered to be the poorest province in Mzansi, or in South Africa. The settlement is based on the subsistence economy. Explain in short What is the difference between your subsistence farming and your small-scale farming? Then we say your subsistence farming is when a farmer only provides for what? For his own or family, and nothing is sold for profit or for the market. But then your small-scale farming is very small, yes, where a certain part of the yields is done what? Is sold to the local markets. Subsistence, survival, family. And then your small-scale farming, you started to give now to the markets. Describe any two difficulties that subsistence farmer might face in this area. Subsistence farmer. Any two of the difficulties, they might find the area to be dry because you can see that there's no water source. Can start to be overgrazed. There will be a lot of erosion, and automatically survival of the fittest. Theft will creep in. 2 marks each. And then there will also be no money. Illness will start to crop in the livestock. Animals will start to be sick. Illnesses will also come to people. There will be a shortage of implementation of ideas. Traditional farming methods will also be part of it. And then, colleagues, let's take any two of them to see the difficulties that might be experienced. It's not an easy question. 3.4, it's a challenging question. The difficulties that you might find there, let's credit any relevant answer that learners have given us. Name one policy that addressed the social injustices in the past agricultural South Africa. And then we say, question 3.4.3, describe any two difficulties that subsistence farmer might face in this area. What will they face? They might face drought, overgrazed, erosion, theft, no money, illnesses. I'm just giving you this slide. It's the same as the previous one. Just that this one, it's now moving downwards. Then this is the question that I wanted, 3.4.4. Name one policy that addresses the social injustices of the past in the agriculture of South Africa. How can we address the injustices, inequalities? We introduce the land reform. Integration of sustainable rural development. It's improve our rural areas. Take any one of them to remove or to address the injustices of the past. 3.4.5, why would many of people in this settlement rather move to the city like East London? Give reasons why would they want to leave this area. Why are they moving? Simple terms, the push factors. There's no work, financial shortages, aging population, lack of basic facilities like schools, lack of proper education, and little for young people to do or nothing. Bad medical facilities. Take any three and take any relevant answer that our candidates might give you to answer that question. 2 marks each, but we want 3 points. 3 by 2, we must get our 6 marks. Let's continue, colleagues. 3.4.6, HIV and AIDS, it's a big problem in many rural areas. I think this is a fact. Describe in short how it has a negative effect on the households and on the economy of the rural areas in the Eastern Cape. Then we say, once HIV and AIDS creeps in, we started to have parentless families, families without parents. Young children have to take over. That's why we call child-headed families. And then breadwinners have now died. We start now to have a financial crisis. Other people in the households might even get sick because of HIV and AIDS. And then there will be huge financial implications if they are not there anymore. Then farmers sometimes are too weak to work on land, but this will not refer to the farm owners, but the laborers. because they will be sick. Now we started to have food shortage. This is what food insecurity. Take any three of the possible answers as to how can HIV and AIDS have an impact, especially the negative one, on the economy of this farm. Question 3 still continues. Now we are coming level 7 questions. Level 7 questions, very important. The settlement in the photo, approximately how many kilos? 1 kilometer from the ocean, on a fairly undeveloped area. Now we talk of the key. Agenda 21 was adopted in 1992 by 178 countries in the UN. This relates to the sustainable development and the human impact on the environment. Discuss in a paragraph, approximately 8 lines, how this resolution of Agenda 21 can be implemented in this area in order to ensure that the settlement can become self-sustainable and put to an end of rural depopulation. What can we do to stop people to move to urban areas? Agenda 21. Number 1, we say encourage consolidation of subsistence farms. They must now combine them, introduce the one that we have just talked about, small-scale farming, and sell to the local market, and replace this with your subsistence farming. Government must provide incentives and training to the farmers to help to increase their what? Their profit. On small scale, they must introduce genetically modified crops or food so that they can start to last longer, especially when the conditions are now different. Introduce rotation. Government can provide subsidies to introduce small-scale irrigation and small-scale mechanization so that they don't move from rural areas to urban areas. They must start to be more profit. Grant low-interest what? Loans, so that these subsistence farmers can start to emerge as high or wealthy or commercial farmers. Encourage consolidation of subsistence farms to increase production is the same as the first one, that one. Protect the soil against soil erosion. You must just check that this one and the first one is the same. Protect soil against soil erosion. Storage of food supplies should be encouraged. No, don't eat from mouth to mouth every day. Start to store food. Provide the area with basic services such as access to water, access to electricity, access to sanitation. You remember these are the basic factors that makes them to move to the city. So let's introduce basic services. 2 marks each. Build schools, clinics, hospitals to improve the standard of living. It's a fact. Improve the infrastructure to connect the area with other towns. Very true. Developed ecotourism possibilities by using local resources to develop articles that can be sold to tourists. And then teach the local inhabitants skills to be their very self-entrepreneurs. And then support the informal traders and provide them with shelters and small loans to start their own businesses. 8-mark question, colleagues. Take any 4 of them and listen to any relevant answer that you might get from our learners. We've got a megalopolis there. A megalopolis, that is how many kilometers? It is 10 kilometers away. Question 3.5. Rapid urban expansion has a major impact on large cities in South Africa. Refer to figure 3.5 and see how this is impacting of it. Now let's define the term urban expansion. What do we mean by the concept urban expansion? Urban expansion refers to the physical growth of an urban area. When our town starts to grow physically, then we start to talk of your urban expansion. We give a mark there. And then 3.5.2, what message do we get from this cartoon when you look at it, trying to convey to us or to get information across? Tell us about the expansion of cities. Then we say the highlight speed at which urban expansion is taking place. You can start to see that this is a remote area, but check how far distant is it from a megalopolis. It's because of the urban expansion, the rural people, and it's written here, we are waiting for the city to come to us. Urban expansion, physical expansion of the city, and very true, it is expanding day in and day out towards them. The second one, cities are rapidly encroaching or expanding on vulnerable farmland, because everyone wants to see himself or herself in the city, and then this causes rural depopulation. Everyone is moving from rural to urban areas. Colleagues, let's take any one of them and accept any other relevant answer that we could get from our learners. Let's go on with question 3. Give the geographical term to describe what? Uncontrolled expansion of the residential area. When everyone do as he wishes, stays wherever, on the outskirts of an urban area. Geographical concept, and that will be an urban sprawl. Remember, urban expansion, physical expansion, but immediately you give a term for an uncontrolled expansion of residential areas. Then you talk of your urban sprawl. Suggest 2 environmental friendly measures to prevent uncontrolled urban expansion. How can we stop this? Number 1, we must introduce the green belts. Remember, in a green belt, they won't cut those trees easy because there will be laws or rules. Then we must start to have towns next to one another. Satellite towns or new towns. We must not have one town where everyone wants to flock in there. Then industrial decentralization, take businesses to people, to rural areas, and then rural development. Let's make sure that our rural areas are developed. And then provide counter-urbanization measures. Colleagues, you must also check with rural development. Some of our candidates will say, let's improve our rural areas. Then we can take it. It's a 2-mark question to make 4. And then we take any other reasonable answer that we could get there. Let's go, colleagues, to 2.5.5. Explain the impact of this urban expansion to the CBD and to the inner city. What will happen? Service delivery will become difficult. Number 2, growth and informal settlements. Started to have them. It's an 8-mark question. You start to have traffic congestion, overcrowding of people, a lot of pollution, social ills or crimes like prostitution and alcohol misuse, lack of space or lack of land, waste management difficulties, values, traditions and custom breakdown, rapid spread of diseases, homeless start to have street kids and move into the very same buildings. Take any one of them, colleagues, as a reasonable answer. I'm still looking forward to see that if they are now old, are they still called street kids? We will deliberate on that. Study the advertisement of the new development in an urban settlement. Define the term CBD. What do you mean by CBD? Central Business District, or could also say the heart of the city. It's 1 mark. Discuss 3 factors that will determine the location of the CBD in the city. We say 3 factors that influence the location of the CBD will include, number 1, accessibility. When you talk of the CBD, you talk of access into it. Number 2, centrifugal or the push. and your pull factors will also contribute. Central place forces will also play a part, which will be a factor influencing the location. It will start to attract places towards the city center. And then there will also be a threshold population. Threshold population, minimum number of customers required to support a business, they will also increase there. And then you'll also have to consider the range, the maximum distance from where a business draws its customers. And then municipal and the local regulations should also be considered. And then we take any three of them, colleagues, to make sure that we discuss three factors that will determine, very important, the location of the CBD. We don't just locate them. We locate them where it's accessible, CBD. We locate them where there are push and pull forces. We locate it always to make sure that it is in the center, central place forces, centrally located. We place your CBD where there's a threshold population, minimum number of people that are going to buy in there. And we consider the range, the maximum distance from where business draws its customers. And then let's put now the laws, the municipal and the local regulations. Let's take any three, colleagues, and credit our learners. Then we move to 3.6.3. The trend in the modern cities is that businesses prefer to settle in suburban areas. Business decides to settle in suburban areas or complexes rather than coming where? In the city center itself. Explain why this is the case. Why do you find businesses deciding to move away from the city center and move towards a bit of the outskirts to the suburban areas? We say, number one, on the outside, it's a peaceful, it's a quieter place. It's very peaceful to live there. Second part, it is away from the CBD that is always so busy, that is always so noisy, that is always so much with traffic congestion. And then outside there's a lot of parking, unlike in the city center. And then the area is accessible. It's easy to reach. It is easy to move from within the area, unlike in the city center. Very important, cheap land. You started to have a lower land value, cheaper land. That's why some of these businesses, they move from the CBD, from the city center, and they go to the outskirts. Colleagues, let's check which one our candidates or the learners have given us, and it's a 2-mark question each, and then it will give us the total of 4 marks, because it will be 2 by 2. Explain what the term green belt means. It's a 1 mark for that. We say a green belt means parks or recreational areas in and around urban settlements. Others could say it is an area of what? Of natural vegetation in the city. This is where you have. Others could also, just before I pass this one, others could also say this is an area where you have your trees, not mentioning trees and grass and everything. Let's be very considerate to see that they are still referring to the green belt or your city or the green belt or your area covered with vegetation. Explain why is it important for modern cities to include the green belt in their planning. They make the area beautiful. They solve problems of urbanization. If there's no vegetation, that everyone will move as he wishes. Also, they solve a problem of pollution. They help to cool down the city. Very true. Absorb carbon dioxide and give out oxygen. They create good and healthy environments when you move around them. You take any one, colleagues, there, it's a 2-mark question. It will give us 2 marks. And then thank you very much. And I say God bless those who keep their lights alight while others are asleep. Let's mark them and make sure that we plant back to our community. Thank you very much, colleagues. Like I said, please don't hesitate. Don't hesitate to talk to me. These are my numbers, 060-5879-047. Please, it will be a pleasure to have your input on day-to-day basis. Thank you very much.